Thank you so much for joining us online today. We so appreciate you checking out this message. We hope you enjoy it and are inspired to live more and more like Jesus Christ by His grace. If you would like to support the ministries of Rancho, you can do so at rancho.tv/giving. Set up a giving profile and a reoccurring gift. We'd sure appreciate that. Enjoy.
All right, well, like we said, when the tragedy struck yesterday afternoon, we rallied as a team through texts and chats and phone calls that we just can't load Rancho Church as normal today. And so this incredible world-changing sermon was tossed for this morning. The whole worship set tossed, and we are just kind of having this experience today where we are dealing with the state of our nation, the state of our country, how politics, religion, the Word of God, the ministry of Jesus, the kingdom of heaven, how all of this weaves together during a time of national grief, of national sadness. Just having an authentic conversation today about how we can respond personally, how we can respond as families, how we can respond as a church. What can we do to help heal a nation that is clearly broken? So yesterday was another heartbreaking tragedy in an increasingly divided and angry and violent country. It's heartbreaking what's happening. There is a trend that is increasing of political rhetoric and political violence that is frankly frightening. Recently, the political violence in America has surpassed the political violence in America in the 1970s. And if you're a student of history, in the 60s and 70s, our country was not in good shape. There was a war, there was insane inflation, oil embargoes, and all kind of political turmoil that resulted in political violence. Since the 70s, we have enjoyed decades of relative political peace. Now, there's disagreements, right? Political disagreements, and that's part of the great adventure of being a society. There are people with different opinions about governance, people with different opinions about policy, and it's fair game to share those disagreements, to be passionate about those disagreements, and to pursue votes to change our country in a way that matches our convictions. But in cycles of American history, and this is true not just of America, but in other places in the world, there are cycles where that ramps up, the rhetoric gets to a point where people start acting out in violent ways, and that has happened in the United States of America in several seasons, in several areas of our young history, including, of course, at its worst, where we were at war with each other. There was a civil war that took 600,000 American lives. A significant percentage of the population died by civil war during that time. And so we've had incredibly dangerous cycles. We are in the midst of one of those cycles that is now worse than it was late 60s and 70s. And at this point, it shows no sign of letting up. Now, I'm not going to be, waving alarm bells that we're heading to a civil war, but just maybe, and I don't want to be too dark here, but just maybe, that bullet was this far away from unimaginable consequences in our country yesterday afternoon. These are serious, serious times. And there's a serious trend that we've all got to take stock of, not just from a personal point of view as citizens of this country that we love, that we're invested in, that we celebrate, but as families who are raising our children in this country. And then as followers of Jesus, to imagine how the teaching of Jesus and the example of Jesus results in how we live our lives to try to make some kind of an impact in a positive way on our country. On a personal level, I have a 16-year-old still at home. This is the only country she knows. This is the only country she knows. She's 16 years old. She only knows incredibly divisive and angry political rhetoric. She only knows kind of this political violence that pops up on increasingly regular basis. She only knows this divided country. She doesn't know better times. And between our political rhetoric and political violence that is statistically increasing, there is COVID. Our young generation is getting the short end of adults behaving badly. And that is a grief. And that is a tragedy. Our family also has a compounding tragedy, as some of your families do. My oldest daughter was in the midst of the nation's worst mass shooting. And so she calls yesterday, and she's torn up because those sounds are the same sounds she heard. The screams are the same screams she heard. The terrified looks on faces are the same terrified looks on her face and her now husband's face and the faces of people around her in 2017. So this is just a compounding tragedy of our nation's violence, our nation's political violence, political rhetoric, anger, division, and sadness that seems to be getting worse. This country is angry and sad, or both. And it has nothing to do with the circumstances of our country. If you just look at the stats of where our country is at, economically, prosperity, power, we are the most powerful and prosperous country on earth, period. Things are going fine. Statistically, things are going fine. Food prices are a little high. Gas prices are a little high. And so the world is looking at our country and going, this is your economy, these are your circumstances, and you are that angry and you are that sad. What is wrong with you? And we've got to ask ourselves the exact same question. What is wrong with us? Our circumstances are tremendous, historically speaking. Our circumstances are tremendous. Now, yes, there are individuals who are feeling the pinch, and yes, prices are too high. I get it. But statistically, historically, we are in great shape. Yet we are societally and culturally racked with sadness and anger. We are desperately broken as a people. This brokenness has nothing to do with circumstance. It is not seasonal. It is not a blip. It is pervasive, as extreme political and extreme religious views just are resulting in rhetoric that hasn't happened here in a very, very long time. And it is now getting to the point of dangerous, not just for political figures. Something has got to turn. Something has got to change. We are broken culturally. We're broken at our core. We are pervasively angry or sad or both. So what is the fix? Is the next election going to fix us? Is November's election going to fix us? What's the answer? Absolutely not. Let's say there's a better economy ahead and food prices go down 5% and gas prices go down 10%, the big fix of our economy, right? If our economy gets fixed a little bit, is that going to solve our problems? What's the answer? No. Is the fix another round of, our thoughts and prayers for the victims? That's all we hear. Thoughts and prayers for the victims. Thoughts and prayers for the victims. Is that going to fix us? Is saying this has to stop going to fix us? I rarely get amped up inside, but yesterday I was furious, not just, of course, at the tragic events that are taking place and the loss of life and the wounds and a political assassination attempt that hasn't happened in America for the last 44 years. I mean, in addition to that, politicians came out pulpit pounding, this has to stop. And I'm like, what did you say? You're now today pounding the pulpit that this has to stop. Yet yesterday, what did you say about your political adversary? What is it that you said? If they get elected, it's the end of the world, end of democracy. If they get elected, we won't have a country. I mean, what did you say? This is both sides. Say the most extreme things, desperately trying to get one more vote or one more dollar. And that's just not politicians. That's just not political leaders. That is religious leaders who will say anything for one more vote or one more dollar. It's not all politicians. It's not all religious leaders. But there's a growing number of politicians and a growing number of religious leaders that are raising the animosity and the rhetoric and outlandish things being said to tear people down, to make other people the enemy for one more vote or one more dollar. It is ruining us. Ruining us. Now, there's no quick fix. Absolutely no quick fix. So this has to be a time of deep reflection. And I'm not talking about deep reflection for a news cycle. And this will be a news cycle. Now, this is a huge history-making chapter in American history. So this isn't going to be done by the weekend. There's going to be a period of some weeks where we might be calling for reason and we might be calling for respect, if I were to bet $1, that will be gone within a month. And we will get right back to it. Right back to the anger and vitriol and tearing each other down and threatening all kinds of stuff. We will get right back to it because we're broken at a soul level. We're broken as a country at a cultural level. There is no quick fix. So is there hope for a better future? What's the answer? Please say it. Yes, thank you. 2 people. Is there hope? Yes, there is. Now, I'm going to say a phrase that is just going to sound like a religious cliche, but we will talk about this in detail. The hope is to look at the life and the ministry, the teaching and the example of Jesus, and to put that to work right here and right now. That is the hope. To look at the example of Jesus, the life of Jesus, the teaching of Jesus, the model of Jesus, and to say, if we did that right here, we will change our trajectory. From desperately lost and broken to hopeful, from desperately wounded to healing. It can happen, and I remain hopeful. It is crystal clear to me. I've been studying the life and ministry of Jesus for about 37 years, like daily studying the life and ministry of Jesus for 37 years. Not just his teaching, not just his example, but the culture in which he was born, the culture in which he was raised, the culture in which he ministered. His culture at the time, 2,000 years ago, in Palestine, modern day Israel, that culture was desperately broken also. The culture that Jesus lived in, was raised in, and ministered in was also deeply broken, was also deeply sad, deeply angered, and in deep division. And so if the ministry of Jesus was in deep sadness, deep anger, and deep division, we can take the life and ministry of Jesus from 2,000 years ago and insert it right here and right now in our own brokenness, and our own sadness, and our own anger, and in our own division, and say, okay, Jesus, what you taught then applies absolutely right now. How you lived, we can model right now. Let me put it this way. Jesus gave us a new way to think. Study the life ministry of Jesus, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in your New Testament. Jesus gave us a new way to think. He gave us a new way to believe, something brand new. This isn't just a continuation of the Old Testament to the New Testament, a brand new way to think, a brand new way to believe, and a brand new way to live that could build a better world that he called the kingdom of heaven. That's how we look at the life of Jesus and study the life of Jesus. He was bringing a new way of thinking, a new way of believing, a new way of living that he called the kingdom of heaven. Now, when we think of heaven, kind of over the last century or so, we might immediately think, that's where we go when we die. That is not what Jesus was talking about. That's not what Jesus was talking about. Now, let me be clear. We read John chapter 14, and Jesus says, hey, listen, I'm going to go, and I'm going to prepare a place for you, and you're going to come with me for eternity. So we have this hope that there is eternal life beyond the grave. Let's just put that on the shelf. Thank God for it. There is hope beyond the grave. Great. But when Jesus was talking about the kingdom of heaven, he was talking about right here and right now, the planet Earth, not just for Israel, but for all people, all countries, all tribes, all tongues, all nations, for all time. He was saying, here's a new way to think, a new way to believe, and a new way to live called the kingdom of heaven. During the time of Jesus, lingering sadness, lingering anger, deep division, and yet he brought the kingdom of heaven here and now. And then he gathered a group of friends called the disciples, the ones who were following Jesus. He gathered a group of friends, by the way, from 9 different political parties. You think we have problems with 2? There were 9 at least during the time of Jesus. He gathered them all. Everybody's welcome. All 9. If there's more, join. Because Jesus wasn't here to bring a political party. He wasn't here to either promote or denigrate any political party. He says, listen, I'm here to build the kingdom of heaven on earth, and everybody is welcome. Let's go. And then they asked Jesus, well, what should we pray for? What should we value? What are we doing, right? What are we doing? We're following you. We like your teaching. We like what we see. We like how you live. You're showing us something new, and it seems to have the authority of God, so we're with you, but what are we with you for? where are we going here? And Jesus says, well, I'll give you an answer. Here's what you should pray for. Here's what we're in it for. And it's called the Lord's Prayer. It's really how Jesus told us to pray, and it might sound familiar. Jesus says, pray like this. Our Father in heaven, may your name be kept holy. May your kingdom come soon. May your will be done where? On earth as it is in heaven. Jesus says that's what we're in this for. That's what you're going to pray for. You're going to pray that heaven would come to earth. The kingdom of heaven would come to earth. That this earth would look like heaven. That's why we're in it. And so you might ask the question, well, what is the kingdom of heaven? What is that? What is this world supposed to look like? Again, look at the life and teaching of Jesus. Here's what the kingdom of heaven is supposed to look like. The kingdom of heaven has love as the only law. Love is the only law. Jesus made that very clear. Love the Lord your God, love your neighbor as yourself. All the law, all the prophets, all the commandments, every religious thing can be kind of summed up in the heart of God to love your neighbor as yourself. One law in the kingdom of heaven. In the kingdom of heaven, people from all different backgrounds and cultures and political views and perspectives would be together in unity, treating each other like family. Did you get that? Some of you are like, well, that can't happen. Well, it did, in part. As Jesus gathered people from 9 political parties, he says, we are a family of faith. We're going to treat each other like sisters. We're going to treat each other like brothers. We're going to be a family that is out to bring the kingdom of heaven to earth. We think different. We believe different. We look at God different. We live a different kind of lifestyle. We are here to bring the kingdom of heaven to earth. And so we're going to welcome everybody. We're going to disagree about beliefs about God. We're going to disagree about politics. We're going to disagree about policy, but we're going to be a family of faith. That's the kingdom of heaven. In the kingdom of heaven, the poor are helped. The hungry are fed. The outcast are welcomed. The lonely are befriended. The sick are cared for. People with mental and physical disabilities are included. That's the kingdom of heaven. Jesus modeled that. He went to people who were suffering and struggling and outcast and considered cursed by God, that were struggling in every imaginable way. Jesus went to them, he pursued them, he loved them, he embraced them, and said, follow me, you're a part of the kingdom of heaven. It's a community where we welcome everyone and we love everyone, and where anger and sadness and violence over time is replaced with peace. Jesus is the Prince of Peace. And we follow him, and we take his teaching seriously, and we take his lifestyle seriously, and we really follow him and change to his ways over time. Inner peace starts emerging. Peace in our families starts emerging. And then over time, peace in our communities and our neighborhoods starts to rise. Anger and sadness and violence diminish, and peace rises, and love rises, and humanitarianism rises, and service toward one another rises, and believing the best in each other rises. This is the kingdom of heaven on earth. Jesus lived for that cause. Every breath toward that cause. Everything he spoke, everything he did to bring the kingdom of heaven on earth. Love is the only law. We welcome each other from all different backgrounds as family. We serve people in need. And over time, sadness and anger gets replaced with peace. That's the kingdom of heaven. Jesus gave his life for that. And as he lived for the kingdom of heaven on earth, the political and religious authorities that had the power and had the courts and had the swords didn't like this. And so they put him to death. Call it the sin of the world. This political power and corruption, religious power and corruption, the sin of the world murdered Jesus, who was here only to bring the kingdom of heaven to earth. The sin of the world murdered Jesus. He lived for this cause. He died for this cause. But God in his love and God in his power raised Jesus from the dead. The political and religious corruption and power, the sin of this world would not keep Jesus in the grave. The love and the power of God raised Jesus from the grave. He ascended to the Father. He sent his Holy Spirit, who is right here today, to correct course and to say, focus on Jesus. Don't focus on a kingdom of the earth and kingdom of power and prosperity for us. Focus on the kingdom of heaven, to love each other selflessly and sacrificially, to welcome everyone, to love everyone, to treat everyone as family, even if they have different points of view, to reach out to the poor and the sick and the lost and the lonely and help them and welcome them. He lived for that. He died for that. He was raised for that and sent his Spirit so that we today would build the kingdom of heaven on earth. And there are setbacks. And some of those setbacks are huge. In our country, we experienced a major setback yesterday, but that really is a symptom of a much larger cancer in our country, the brokenness that has gotten us to where we are today. Jesus did everything he needed to do. He taught, he preached, he modeled, he exampled it all. He gave his very life for the cause. God raised him from the dead. His Spirit is with us. Jesus did everything he needed to do to get the kingdom of heaven to earth. But God's not going to force it. God's not going to shove this down our throats. I've given you Jesus. I've given you his teaching. I've given you his example. He rose from the dead. Are you going to do your part? Are you going to do your part? Am I going to do my part? That's the outstanding question. And it's not just for me and it's not just for you. It is for us. It is for us as a church, right? As a church family to be able to say, okay, well, what are we going to do in this broken nation? And I'll state the obvious, we're in a broken city. Our city is broken. Our city is like an epicenter of division in southwest Riverside County. What are we going to do? Who are we going to be in this time, in this broken place? Jesus gave us two options. And he gave us two options as he answered a question that came from the disciples. So the disciples are hanging around Jesus. This is at the pinnacle of the ministry of Jesus. So the core disciples are like, yeah, we're with him. You know, thousands and thousands of people are following Jesus. Throngs of people were crushing Jesus. I mean, he is at the top of his game. The inner disciples are like, yeah, we're with him. We're super important. And he's talking about the kingdom of heaven. And in their mind, when they think kingdom, you know what they're thinking? They're thinking kingdom. They're thinking power. They're thinking glory. They're thinking honor. They're thinking prestige. They're thinking wealth. They're thinking control. They're thinking ruling. That's what they're thinking. And it's understandable. The only kingdom they knew was a kingdom of power and rule and authority and glory and honor and swords and armies and taking over, and that's all they knew. And so they asked Jesus this question. The disciples came to Jesus and asked, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? Now we know what their motive was because it's all over the Gospels. They're like, hey, Jesus, I'm in your inner circle, right? I'm in like the tight group of 12. And the super tight, we're in the group of 3, you know, Peter, James, and John. And they're carrying themselves like they are the thing. We're in the inner circle. So Jesus, who's greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And you know what they're thinking, right? And they're thinking, well, Jesus is going to say, well, you're the greatest in the kingdom of heaven because you've been with me from the beginning, right? You were the original 12, or you were the core group of 3. You are the most important in the kingdom of heaven. That's what they thought, and that's what they expected Jesus to affirm. But Jesus did not. He did not. Jesus, in fact, confronted the whole notion of being great, getting what I want, my power, my prestige, my position, my prosperity, what they wanted to do, which, let me be clear, every civilization does the same thing. Every civilization merges their politics with their faith. They put it together in this nightmare of kingdom. And they move forward kingdom, and they move forward armies, and they move forward, we've got to defeat the enemy. They move forward their rhetoric. These are the enemies that must be defeated. We need to take our country back. If the other team does this, it's the end of this and the end of this. And we just pile on this rhetoric that gets everybody angry, everybody tense, and it's just a matter of time where it results in violence and sometimes worse. Jesus knew what they were thinking. They were thinking kingdom, power, glory, and Jesus says, you've got it all wrong. There are religious communities today of every religion that still don't get it. They still merge their politics with God. We're on God's team, and we want to win, and we're a part of this tribe, and we will save. And it's just the same old kingdoms of the world rhetoric. And that never goes well. So Jesus had to correct his disciples. It is not about kingdom, power, and glory. It's about something entirely different. So here's how we responded in Matthew 18, verse 2. Jesus called a little child to him and put the child among them. He says, so anyone who becomes as humble as this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And they shut up fast. It was so out of left field, and that's what Jesus does all the time, right? People are thinking, well, God must want this, and God must want this. Jesus is talking in kingdom, so it must be this kind of kingdom, earthly kingdom. Let's defeat the enemy. Let's like mobilize our rhetoric and mobilize even violence, and let's win. In the name of God, let's win. Defeat the enemy. Jesus brings over a child and says, this is your example. Follow her. Become like a child. Now just imagine with me the contrast that Jesus is making here. So on the one hand, they're thinking monarchy, kingdom, rule, authority, power, money, fame, glory, control. So think of that image in your brain. Kingdom. I get to experience that. Now imagine a 5-year-old girl just wanting to play with her friends. Jesus says, she's your example. I'm sure they didn't even know how to process that. We're still struggling to process that 2,000 years later. It's the little child that's our example. We went on a little vacation last week to Monterey. We were gonna go to Yosemite, saw the weather, that it was gonna be 104 and it's all burning, and so we thought, I think we're gonna go somewhere else. So we found a camping spot in Monterey. It was like a miracle. And we went there and it was 68 degrees all week. We were in hoodies. I would suggest right after this service, I don't care, get in your car, go to Monterey, like today, escape this heat. It was great. It's Jenny and I and our youngest, 16 years old, and she's right over there, gonna be a little bit embarrassed, but we were talking about when she was a kid. She was a fun little girl. All my kids were fun because I have to say that as a dad, but she was a fun little girl. Always singing, always dancing, always playing, and we got a chance to just kind of talk about that and celebrate that, and just a fun little girl. That's our example that Jesus says to follow. Never meet a stranger, play with anyone. If you're in the playground or you're asking, is a 5-year-old girl asking about political affiliation on the playground? Is a 5-year-old girl asking about religious convictions on a playground? Is a 5-year-old girl kind of wondering where they're coming from in terms of policy decisions? They're just human beings. Let's play. Human beings, let's play. You look different backgrounds, different perspectives. Who cares? Let's play. Let's just be together, right? The kingdom of heaven is humble and kind and full of love. It is that simple. The kingdom of heaven is humble and kind and full of love. We're in the midst of a series called Us, 7 Ways to Relationship Well, and again, the sermon that was prepped as of yesterday at 6 p.m. was completely tossed. But we're in the middle of this series called Us that really is what we need to be pursuing. And we intentionally planned this series knowing that we were going to be in this political kind of hotbed. And so I'm just letting you behind the curtain of Oz. When we plan out sermon series, it's pretty intentional. Where are we at as a culture, as a community, the example and teaching of Jesus, Christ-centered, grace-based, humanitarian. And so we designed this series knowing that political tensions were going to start rising, having no idea there would be an assassination attempt on a president, former president. And so this is as poignant and relevant today as it was yesterday morning. We have got to be about us. We've got to pursue us. The way children pursue us on a playground, we've got to pursue us in community. In our families, in our city, in our nation, we've got to be people about us. Because really, when it's all kind of said and done, relationships are what matter. Relationships are what matter. Now, I've been a lead pastor for 20-ish years. I've walked with people in the last season of life and in the last moments of life hundreds and hundreds of times. So I have been with people and at their bedside with people when they are saying their last words and they're reflecting on their lives and they're reflecting on what matters. I have done that hundreds of times. Never once has anybody said to me, you know, Pastor Scott, I wish I worked more. At the end of my life, I wish I worked. No one said that. No one has ever said to me, you know, at the end of my life, I wish I made more money. Nobody said that once. I wish I made more money. I wish I bought more stuff. No one has said that to me in their final moments. Oh, I wish I bought more stuff. But our country is just kind of obsessed with economy and prices of things and stuff we can buy. It's like an obsession. It does not matter in the end. Nobody's even thinking about, oh, I got to buy cool stuff along the way. Oh, I got to make more money on the line. No. When it's all said and done, it's about relationships that matter. I've never had one person say, you know what, I wish I had more influence and power in this world. This may shock you. Not one person has ever said in their final moments, I wish I got more politically involved. It doesn't matter in the end. Now, I want to be clear. It's important. Having a job, making money, providing for your family is important. Politics is important. I got several text messages after the first service from politicians, which I always get a little nervous in this conversation. And they're like thumbs up and clappy hands. And so, listen, it's important work. Politics is important. Elected officials are important. For God's sake, I would never do it. But elected positions are important. Moving policy forward is important. Governance is important. But truly, when it is all said and done, what matters is relationship. What matters is relationship. And Jesus is the model of relationshiping well. Jesus is the model of relationshiping well. You're like, relationshiping is bad grammar. I know it. Spell check is just lighting me up. But during this series, we're turning relationship into a verb because it is active and it takes intentionality and it takes work. Relationshiping takes work. Especially societally, as broken as we are. I mean, the entire planet is grieving the state of the United States of America today. We've got to reset. We've got to learn to relationship well. We've got to reset. Okay, well, you know, getting food prices down 10% is not the solution. Getting a new set of elected officials is not the solution. A political win is not the solution. The problem is deep and it's systemic and it is cultural and is at a soul level. We've got to reset and we've got to value relationships and learn how to relationship well. When God really wanted to make himself known, he didn't do so from a distance. He didn't split the sky and say, hey, I'm up here and you're down there and you ought to know a few things. He showed up in the person, flesh and bone, Jesus Christ, the full expression of God as a human being relating with us face to face. Here's how it goes in 2 Corinthians 3. Talking about the Jewish people, when they read Moses' writings today, their hearts are covered with a veil. Now, I won't spend too much time on this, but when we read the Old Testament, the writings of Moses, the 10 Commandments, we read that as a veil. There's a shroud. We don't really see God through the 10 Commandments. We really don't. We see stone, commandments on stone. That's not the heart of God. It's commandments on stone. And those commandments were meant to civilize a community that just escaped Egypt. They had no government. They had no civil code. So God says, hey, here's your civil code. Here's your government. There it is, first 5 books of the Bible. That's for Israel. Time and a place for Israel. But there's a veil. They don't see God through the commandments. They don't see God through the commandments on stone, right? So there's a veil. They don't understand. But whenever someone turns to the Lord, turns to Jesus, the veil is taken away. Not to stone and commandments of the old, but the person of Jesus, the relationship with God through Jesus. For the Lord is spirit. Spirit is alive. Spirit is person. For the Lord is spirit, and wherever the spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. So all of us who have had the veil removed can get this, see and reflect the glory of the Lord. Not through stone and commands and politics, but through the Spirit of God through Jesus, a relationship with God person to person. That's where freedom is. That's where life is. That's where the veil is taken away and we can see God and we can see his glory. We can see his grace. We see his love. We know he's a father. We know he's forgiven us. We know he embraces us. We know he wants to establish the kingdom of heaven on earth, where love is the only commandment, where everybody is brought together in unity from all their different backgrounds and perspectives, where we treat each other with kindness and we serve the poor and we care for those people who are in need. We welcome everybody. This is the kingdom of heaven because we see the kingdom of heaven through the person of Jesus. Not through the commandments of stone, but through the person of Jesus. We see the very nature of God, our loving and forgiving God. Now we can reflect that to the world. See and reflect. Relationship first. Relationship with God and relationship with each other. Putting people first. Pursuing us over me. Pursuing unity and love over political wins and political victories. And so we believe the best in each other and we speak the best about each other. That's seeing and reflecting the glory of God. I'm going to close our time with just a couple of things to think about, at least a place to start. I'm going to ask us to intentionally invest quality and quantity time with family and friends and even beyond that. Quality and quantity time with people, putting people first. Jesus did this. Jesus is the very nature of God, and what did he do most often? He sat down with friends and family over meals, extended periods of time, eating together, drinking together, enjoying each other's company. That's what Jesus did much of the time on earth. He is God in human form. He calmed the storms. He healed the sick. He raised the dead. But what did he choose to do? He chose to eat meals with friends and family and future friends. What did Jesus do? He chose relationship first. He didn't push commandments. He didn't push politics. He neither built up nor destroyed political parties. Did you get that? He neither built up nor destroyed political parties. He welcomed all political parties to this movement of the kingdom of heaven on earth. And yeah, they had some disagreements along the way for sure. But Jesus chose us over me. He chose us over self. He chose relationship over everything else. Met with people, ate with people, and all the good stuff happens as a result of sitting together around a table, enjoying food and drink together. There's hospitality and there's care there, and there's a welcoming there and a presentation of carefully prepared meals. There's conversation that's meaningful and personal. There's a whole experience around the meal. So I want to encourage you as we pursue us, start with your family, prioritize meals, prioritize dinners, just eating together, enjoying each other's company. We certainly do that as a family, and it's just the cornerstone of our relationship, meals together. Choose time to get together with your friends over meals, not just, hey, how you doing, acquaintances at work, but just getting together, eating together, enjoying each other's company, building us over meals. All the great feasts of the Old Testament and even the New Testament is over a meal. In fact, what do we call the great sacrament of the Christian church? The Lord's what? Supper. The Lord's Supper. There's a meal. We call it communion. Indulge me for 2 minutes around this. I hate the way we do communion. Hate it. I do. I rant about it every month before we do it to our staff. And like, can you believe, and they all start laughing, we pass out like what I call them, Pop-Tops. Pop-Tops communion, and you take the little nasty stuff that's like cardboard, we call it bread, and you chew on that for a while, and you take the grape juice, and it's nasty. I hate the way we do communion. We're gonna do it like that in a few weeks, and I'm not gonna like it. The way I like it, we stopped doing during COVID for darn good reason. It would now be considered nasty. I don't like it. And the reason I don't like the way we do communion is because we're all shoulder to shoulder, and everybody is facing the stage, and nobody's facing each other. Is that really the Lord's meal? I don't know. I'm ranting. I have this little vision, probably never going to happen, that on Communion Sunday, last Sunday of the month, I believe, I should know, that we have a shorter service. A few songs of worship, short sermon, and then we go outside, and there's tables everywhere outside. I mean, there's tables everywhere. And we have a carefully prepared Lord's Supper. It's not nasty and stanky, right? It's not germ infested, but just carefully prepared like actual bread, unleavened bread from the Near East. Wouldn't that be kind of cool, that recipe? Well, hang on, it's not done yet. It's not done yet. It gets better. And we're adults, most of us, actual wine, grape juice for the kiddos. We have gluten-free options for the bread. I mean, we're dialed in out there, dialed in. And we actually dismiss to tables, and we enjoy this meal. The bread that represents the broken body of Christ, the wine that represents the shed blood of Christ, and we are face to face. Nothing awkward, no, hey, share your deep, darkest secrets with each other, no weirdness, but we're actually sharing something together, and we take this together. And then we have baptisms for the new believers, and we have a taco cart out there for like a real lunch. Can that happen? We're all excited about it, but I'll tell you what's going to happen. The first time we dismiss, there's going to be a lot of new people, and they're not going to know anybody, and they're just going to go to their cars like this, and they may know. So there's a lot behind that, but it's like we are people of relationship. This is a community of relationship, and relationships are built around meals and face-to-face time. And not just for our friends and family, but for strangers and even our enemies. Last story, and we're going to do a song together. You heard the story about Zacchaeus? You know Zacchaeus in the Bible? For those of you who are Sunday school people, Zacchaeus was a wee little man. A wee little man was he. He climbed up on a sycamore tree for the Lord he wanted to see. And as the Savior came that way, he looked up in a tree and said, Zacchaeus, you come down from there, for I'm going to your house today. That's a cute little song that we sing in Sunday school. Some of you are like, I've never been to Sunday school. What are you talking about? You are weird. This is right out of Luke chapter 19. There are people just pressing against Jesus by the thousands, and there's the enemy of the people in a tree because he is this tall, but he's a tax gatherer, paid by the oppressing army of Rome to steal from his own people. Nobody likes Zacchaeus. But he wanted to see Jesus. He's drawn to Jesus. Everybody hated him, but he's drawn to Jesus. And I think in the back of his mind, he knew Jesus was in the habit of welcoming people, even enemies. So he went up on a tree to see Jesus, to hear Jesus, and Jesus says, I'm going to your house today. We are going to have a meal today. And everybody freaked out. Jesus had a lot of meals with a lot of enemies, and everybody freaked out. You can't hang out with them. They're sinners. You can't hang out with them. They're enemies. You can't share a meal together. Jesus looked up and said, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly, and they shared a meal. Became friends. Enemies became friends around a meal. Prioritize family meals. Invite more friends over for dinner, and invite a possible new friend over for dinner the way Jesus did. Rancho Church is not political. We neither support nor tear down any political party. Some people like that, some people hate it. And I mean, hate it. So in December, we got lit up from the far left. I mean, like, oh my gosh, do you have anything better to do? 3 months later, we got lit up from the far right. It's like, ugh. It's just when you're not aligned with a political party, you become the enemy of the political party's extremes. Just the way it happens. And I'm not saying we get everything right. We certainly do not. We're trying. And so when we got hit from the far right, we got nailed by one person in particular who just kept posting the most insane things. Where did you get this stuff? So I DM'd him, said, hey, let's get together for coffee. There's 3 options here. I mean, truly, we're getting lit up. He's lighting me up, so it's personal. And there's 3 options, really, right? You can fight back with online. That's no good. Fun, but no good. You can ignore it, and this is at a level and a breadth that you couldn't ignore. Or, hey, let's get together. Let's have coffee. I'm buying, right? And to my shock, he said yes. I've only had a yes twice. He said yes. And we got together. Now, it's not a meal, but we had coffee. Might have had a muffin, so we're getting close. But we were face to face, not online, not shouting across whatever digital street, bombing each other. Sitting down, having coffee, 2 hours. And when he sat down, I mean, the side eye he was giving me, it's like, you are the enemy. And he had questions. We talked, corrected a lot of the gossip, and then we started getting warmer and warmer, some person-to-person connections. We shared our stories, we shared our life. We knew each other. We went to the same elementary school here in Temecula. So we connected on a lot of levels as human beings. Now, get this, a face-to-face connection like human beings. Can you imagine? Now, we're not best buddies right now, but we're connected. And I'm pretty sure that but when there's something stirring around this or that, or he hears something or I hear something, we are connected and we will get together again. That can happen in America. When we pursue us over me, when we pursue humility like a little child, and we play together and get to know each other and embrace each other, no matter our differences, we can heal. I want to show you a video. We showed this maybe a year ago. It's from the He Gets Us campaign that's on all these sports channels, really promoting the cause of Christ. And to me, this video says it all. And then we'll close in a song called Unity, which we were planning on doing anyway, and it is just perfect. But take a look.
Maybe I'm foolish, maybe I'm blind, thinking I can see through this and see what's behind. Got no way to prove it, so maybe I'm lying. Take a look in the mirror, what do you see? Do you see it clearer, or are you deceived in what you believe? 'Cause I'm only human after all.
You gotta love that, right? How cool is that? Jesus loved the people that we tend to hate. Yesterday, we were probably 2 inches. That bullet was 2 inches away from probably an unimaginable national horror. 2 inches. How we respond to that individually, as families, as a church, as the Christian faith, nationally and globally, how we respond is gonna matter. Are we gonna keep investing in anger and sadness and potentially violence that may continue, God forbid? Or are we gonna do our little part to help turn this around and pursue us? Pursue the humility of a little child. This song was already in the plan for today, and it is just picture perfect. It's a song called Unity. We've done it before. The bridge of that song could not be more poignant right now. Save us from this madness. Save us from this sadness. Lead us to what matters. closer to you. Relationship with God and relationship with each other. That's what really matters. Enjoy.
I wouldn't deny you if you asked me. I'd rather lie than to blaspheme. If I need a ride in your backseat, will you be there for me? See me on the path on your way home. Might need a mattress to sleep on, but if I'm gonna don't wanna be wrong, will you be there with me? Will you walk with me down a lonely street? Talk to me, tell me what you see. Stand by me so the world will see you and me in unity. You and me in unity. You and me in unity. We'll be the light when the sun drops. Open on the stars through the treetops. That you'll be there with me. Will you walk with me down a lonely street? Talk to me, tell me what you see. Stand by me so the world will see you and me in a unity. Walk with me down a lonely street. Talk to me, tell me what you see. Stand by me so the world will see you and me in a unity. You and me in a unity. You and me in unity. You and me in unity. Save us from this madness. Heal us from this sadness. Lead us to what matters. Closer to you. Save us from this madness. Heal us from this sadness. Lead us to what matters. Closer to you. Will you walk with me down a lonely street? Talk to me, tell me what you see. Stand by me so the world will see you and me in unity. Walk with me down a lonely street. Talk to me, tell me what you see. Stand by me so the world will see you and me in unity. 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 Do you believe in unity?
Thank you, Evan. It's a heavy time in our country. It's a heavy time in the world. This was a global event yesterday. We all have some thinking to do, some praying to do, praying for healing, praying for this madness to stop and the sadness to stop and to draw us to God through Jesus, who came to show us a genuine face-to-face relationship with him, to show us that there is a new kingdom of heaven where we can be in a relationship with each other in a diverse community of faith, a diverse community as human beings, treating each other like brothers and sisters together, pursuing something better than our own interests. I still believe that's possible. I still believe it's going to happen. I still believe this tide is going to turn. I just don't know when. We could be heading into a very, very rough 4 months. I don't think this weekend is going to necessarily turn the tide. I'm hopeful, I'm praying, but I don't necessarily think it is. And I think we are all going to have some decisions to make about how we act and how we speak and how we present the grace and goodness and kindness of Jesus. As a 5-year-old child that just wants to be around people and to enjoy each other. I think we can do that together. I want to invite you back next week. We're going to continue on this relationship series, and I cannot think of a more poignant subject than to pursue us together. God bless you as you go. We'll see you then.